Two guys stand facing each other in a large arena filled with cheering spectators. Heavy rain pours down as tension fills the air. One of them looks down on the other, believing that a mere commoner has no chance against him. At that moment, the referee signals the start of the match. Weiss confidently believes he will crush his opponent and show his dominance, while Lilith watches and supports him from the side. However, the outcome is completely unexpected. Weiss is swiftly and decisively defeated by his opponent. Weiss Vincent, widely known as a cruel and villainous noble, loses to the protagonist, Alan. From that defeat onward, Weiss loses everything he once had. He later becomes a servant of the Demon King and is eventually used as a living shield, meeting a miserable end. At the same time, a gamer is seen in his room, and in the next moment he is reincarnated as Weiss himself. In a massive mansion, Weiss is seen wearing a sinister smile as he stands before a maid who is kneeling with her hands tied behind her back. Suddenly, his expression changes to shock. He looks around in confusion, unable to understand where he is or what is happening. Just moments ago, he was playing a game, yet now a bound maid is right in front of him. The maid notices his strange behavior, and Weiss realizes how beautiful she is. He feels a sense of familiarity, as if he has seen her before. When he hears his own name, unease grows inside him. He looks into a nearby mirror and is horrified to discover that he has become Weiss, the abusive and villainous noble. It soon becomes clear that he has reincarnated into the world of the school fantasy game Noblesse Oblige as Weiss Vincent. This is a game he has cleared many times. In the game's school arc, Weiss is the main villain who blocks the path of the protagonist, Alan. Weiss is known as a despicable noble who uses his authority to mercilessly abuse the weak. After being completely defeated, he loses everything, serves the Demon King, and is ultimately sacrificed as a shield, leading to his death. Back in the present, Weiss begins to suspect that the maid before him is Lilith Scarlet. He remembers that the former Weiss had a habit of tormenting Lilith. As those memories surface, he feels deep disappointment and discomfort. He cannot understand why the former Weiss would do such cruel things, especially to someone as small and gentle as Lilith. Weiss considers untying her immediately, but he hesitates. He worries that a sudden change in behavior might raise suspicion. Instead, he decides to end things for the day and unties her hands. As he does so, he notices a bruise on her neck and sees how violently she is trembling. Unable to ignore it, he attempts to use healing magic and successfully restores the injured area. He quickly realizes that this is a hidden healing spell left by the game developers, one that has been usable since the start of the game but was never explained. He remembers discovering it through a strategy book and feels relieved that it still works. When he notices Lilith staring at him, he hastily downplays his actions, insisting that he was only testing healing magic and not acting out of concern. Lilith becomes emotional and expresses her gratitude. She is clearly surprised that he can use healing magic at all. Seeing how thankful she is, Weiss feels uneasy. Even though the suffering was caused by the former Weiss, Lilith still shows obedience and appreciation. This makes him realize how deeply she must have been mistreated. Overcome with guilt, Weiss apologizes for everything and promises never to hurt her again. Lilith looks at him in shock. Later, at the dining table, Weiss finishes his meal calmly. The family butler, Zevis Aldine, nervously clears the dishes, expecting the usual outburst. In the past, Weiss would complain about the food and throw plates onto the floor. Instead, Weiss praises the meal and admits that he has been wrong to treat food so carelessly before. He compliments the seasoning, calling it perfect. Zevis becomes overwhelmed with emotion, feeling deeply honored. The other servants also react strongly, moved by the unexpected kindness. Weiss finds their reaction strange, as it was only an ordinary meal to him. He then realizes that everyone believes Weiss has finally matured, never suspecting that he is an entirely different person inside. This makes him understand just how cruel the former Weiss truly was. With this realization, Weiss resolves to change completely. He decides that he will never make the servants suffer again and plans to dispose of the cane, believing that true change must begin with his actions. As a noble, Weiss is required to enroll in a prestigious academy once he turns 15. The entrance examination for that academy is only 2 years away. In the original story, Weiss loses to the protagonist during the combat test, and from that moment on, his reputation steadily collapses as criticism and hostility spread around him. Weiss reasons that if the past version of himself had not lost at that point, his future might have turned out differently. With that resolve, he lights a fire and burns the cane, vowing that no matter how much effort it takes, he will avoid the path that leads to ruin. Soon after, Weiss is drenched in sweat and completely exhausted from intense sword training. His instructor, Milk Avidas, an S-rank adventurer, harshly pushes him to continue, showing no patience for weakness. Weiss struggles to keep moving, but he forces himself to persist. Using his family's influence, he personally requested Milk Avidas as his teacher. In the game, she only appears near the end and is known as one of the strongest swordsmen in the royal capital. Weiss had asked her to ignore his noble status and train him without mercy, but he never expected her methods to be so brutal and frightening. Lilith later appears and hands Weiss a headband with words written on it, as requested by Milk. Weiss ties it around his forehead, knowing that it represents giving his all, even to the point of death. Noblesse Oblige is infamous as a death-level difficulty game that can only be cleared through repeated play and perfect preparation. Weiss understands that neglecting even a single step could lead to immediate expulsion or death. With no time to waste, he commits himself fully to training. However, Weiss has never properly trained his body, neither in this life nor his previous one. As a result, the training is overwhelmingly exhausting. Even so, building basic physical strength is essential for mastering both swordsmanship and magic. Each day begins with practicing forms, followed by endless running to build stamina. After that comes relentless muscle training that continues from morning until night, repeating the same brutal routine every day. Zivas supports Weiss by preparing meals packed with protein, as requested. Weiss feels apologetic for troubling the butler, who is already busy with his duties. 2 weeks pass since the training begins. While recovery magic can heal injuries, Weiss knows that strengthening the body also requires proper nutrition. Thanks to Zivas's constant support, Weiss is barely able to endure the extreme workload. By the 3rd week, the training becomes so harsh that a single day feels like an entire month. Before he realizes it, the sun has already set once again. Having finally adapted to the physical training, Weiss decides it is time to begin magic lessons. He hopes that his magic instructor will be gentle and far less strict than Milk. Instead, Milk Avidas appears once more, revealing herself as his magic teacher as well. Weiss is overwhelmed by despair as he learns that she is not only a master swordsman but also a powerful mage. Weiss expresses frustration toward Zivas, reminding him that he had asked for a kind teacher. Zivas calmly explains that Milk Avidas is a rare genius, a magic swordsman capable of using 2 of the 4 great magic attributes. Soon after, Milk responds with her usual cold tone before showing a gentle smile and promising to teach magic kindly. That promise quickly proves misleading. Weiss is soon forced into brutal waterfall training under Milk's instruction. As icy water crashes down on him, he struggles to endure and begins to doubt where her kindness has gone. The training is even harsher than his sword practice. Milk pushes him to continue for hours, emphasizing that magic requires mana, and mana can only be increased through constant physical and magical strain. From that day onward, Weiss must repeat this training daily until his body collapses. Alongside basic magic practice, practical combat training with wooden swords also begins. Weiss is defeated effortlessly by Milk every time. After each session, Lilith carefully heals his injuries, reassuring him that she will continue supporting him with healing magic. Encouraged by her kindness, Weiss continues to push himself forward. Weiss finds it strange that someone as lazy as he once was can now work so hard. In his past life, he lived like an empty shell, always running away from problems and giving up before truly trying. He reflects on how different he is now and wonders what has changed between his former life and the present. 2 months pass since the training began. After another exhausting session, Weiss sits down to wipe the sweat from his body. Milk lightly pats his head and shows a rare smile, acknowledging that he has completed the training within 2 hours, a clear improvement from before. Milk explains that each time Weiss reaches a goal, she rewards him in her own way. Weiss feels that her balance between harshness and reward is unfair, but she denies it. At that moment, Lilith arrives with Weiss's lunch. Milk points out that while she plays the role of strict discipline, Weiss has already been receiving plenty of encouragement and care from those around him. She reminds him not to overlook the quiet support that allows him to keep moving forward. Weiss finally understands that his strength comes from everyone supporting him. Lilith stays by his side and heals him without fail. Zivas ensures he is properly fed and looked after. Milk hardens her heart and pushes him relentlessly so that he can grow stronger. Without their combined effort, he would never have made it this far. Both the former Weiss and his past life self lived only for themselves, which is why no one stood beside them and no one corrected their mistakes. Weiss realizes that what he truly needed was a balance of kindness and strict guidance. With this understanding, he resolves to stop living only for himself and to move forward alongside those who support him. Until now, Weiss's only goal has been to avoid death and ruin for his own sake. From this point forward, his purpose changes. He decides that he will not allow Lilith or the others who have supported him to feel sadness or regret. Determined to show everyone a better and stronger version of himself, he resolves to completely avoid the path of destruction. Later, Weiss is seen once again drenched in sweat, his body trembling as he pushes through another round of harsh training. Milk raises the next goal to 4 hours, forcing him to endure even longer than before. Weiss walks through the streets alongside Milk and Lilith. They arrive in League Belt Town, a place known in the game as the first city the protagonist visits. As Weiss observes the surroundings, he notices 2 adventurers openly fighting in the street, confirming that the town's security remains as poor as he remembers. 3 months have passed since he began his training, and with his progress reaching a suitable point, Milk assigns him a practical combat test in this very city. Weiss realizes that this test involves real combat rather than a staged fight. Milk's confident and unsettling smile makes it clear that she intends to choose the best possible opponent for him. Lilith encourages him, but despite her support, Weiss feels deeply uneasy. As they continue walking, several thugs notice the group and begin making crude remarks about Milk and Lilith. Weiss looks at the thugs with pity, fully aware that provoking Milk could easily cost them their lives. League Belt Town is infamous as a lawless den of criminals, and Weiss resolves that no matter what happens, he must protect Lilith at all costs. However, Lilith shows no fear and reacts with cold annoyance toward the thugs. Milk advises her to ignore them, dismissing the criminals as unworthy of attention. Weiss glances at Lilith once more, sensing an intense and momentary killing intent radiating from her. He wonders if it is merely his imagination. Later, at the Adventurers Guild, 3 rogue adventurers confront Weiss and pressure him to step outside. Weiss immediately recognizes them as the Boudin brothers, the opponents chosen for his test. Milk has already explained their background to him. The 3 brothers have committed countless crimes, hiding their actions by bribing corrupt military police. Those officials have now been arrested, leaving the brothers exposed and awaiting judgment. Milk makes it clear that the Boudin brothers are extremely dangerous criminals and that there is no need for restraint. They are chosen precisely because they are suitable opponents for Weiss's first true battle. Weiss hesitates and considers withdrawing, but Milk prevents him from backing down. Although Weiss has strong determination, he lacks real combat experience, and real combat is a challenge he must eventually face. Milk emphasizes that this moment is his best opportunity. If Weiss avoids this fight, his first real battle in the future may occur without anyone watching over him. Many have lost their lives simply because they lacked experience. For now, Milk remains nearby, ready to intervene if the situation turns dangerous. Back in the present, Weiss cannot stop wondering where Milk has gone as he is dragged away by the 3 brothers. Neither Milk nor Lilith is anywhere in sight. He begins to suspect that Milk has deliberately tricked him. He only agreed to face these men because he believed she would be backing him up. Now, as he is taken further away, uncertainty and tension build inside him. Even so, Weiss understands that he can no longer retreat out of fear. Backing down is no longer an option. He forces himself to stay calm and braces for what is coming. His goal is clear. He intends to disable his opponents by cutting off one of their arms. Killing them is unnecessary, but this is a 3-against-1 fight, and he is unsure if he can win fairly. Despite their rough appearance, the 3 men move with confidence and skill, making the situation even more dangerous. Weiss recalls Milk's teachings and reminds himself to trust what he has learned. As long as he follows her training, he believes he can survive. At the same time, Milk and Lilith watch from the window of a nearby tavern as Weiss is dragged away. Lilith reacts with shock and anger, realizing that Milk has deceived even her. Milk remains calm and insists that provoking Weiss this way is necessary to push him forward. She assures herself that if the situation truly becomes life-threatening, she will intervene. Soon after, she casually slumps onto the table with a mug of beer, acting unconcerned. Inside the tavern, several thugs notice Lilith and begin approaching her. They boast about controlling the area and imply that they are looking for girls to keep them company. Behind them, several frightened young women are seen tied up in the back. At that moment, Lilith's expression turns cold, and a dangerous glare fills her eyes. Elsewhere, blood suddenly splashes across the ground. Weiss has already made his move. One of the thugs collapses in agony as his arm is severed. Weiss remembers Milk's most important lesson: the key to battle is catching the enemy off guard. A first strike that surprises the opponent is more powerful than any technique. Understanding this, Weiss acts without hesitation. Instead of waiting for his enemies to move, he strikes first, turning the flow of battle in his favor. At that moment, one of the thugs rushes in from behind, but Weiss reacts instantly. He spins and delivers a powerful kick, smashing the man's face before he can strike. At the same time, Weiss keeps his focus on the enemy in front of him. As he moves, he reflects on his past habit of delaying decisions and leaving everything to his future self. He realizes that time alone never solves anything. Without hesitation, Weiss severs another thug's arm and throws the screaming man into his companion. He then charges forward with firm resolve, determined to abandon his lazy and cowardly former self. In a swift exchange, he overwhelms the third thug. In that moment, Weiss understands that the fight is already over and that he has won. Weiss later realizes how close the battle truly was. If the fight had moved into the alley, the thugs would have reinforced themselves with mana and raised their defenses. If all three had entered full combat readiness at the same time, victory would have been impossible. Weiss wins only because he moves before his enemies can react. Soon after, Milk reappears and evaluates the fight with her usual strict standards. She acknowledges his effort but still points out flaws in his approach, believing he could have acted even faster and more decisively. Lilith, on the other hand, praises Weiss wholeheartedly, clearly impressed by his actions. Weiss then reflects on Milk's sudden disappearance and realizes it was deliberate. As he looks closer, he notices a faint blood stain on Lilith's sleeve. She quickly hides it, and Weiss is left with an uneasy feeling, unsure of what truly happened while he was gone. Back at the tavern, the rescued women and the attendants stare in shock. The band of thieves, more than 20 strong, lie scattered across the floor, all suffering from severe injuries. The scene leaves a deep impression on everyone who witnesses it. Elsewhere, a noble lady reads the news reporting the capture of the notorious Boudin brothers and the dismantling of their criminal group, accomplished with Weiss's involvement. She pauses in quiet thought as she absorbs the report. Meanwhile, at the Vincent estate, a formal letter of gratitude arrives along with a monetary reward. 1 year and 6 months pass since Weiss's training begins. He now stands calmly beneath a violent waterfall, enduring the crushing force against his back without flinching. The endless days of harsh training continue as usual, but the weakness of the past is gone. He no longer collapses from lack of stamina or mana exhaustion. With a fierce punch, he strikes a log carried by the waterfall and shatters it into splinters. He can now sense the presence of enemies even through walls, and he clearly feels mana flowing smoothly through his body. From this, Weiss realizes that he has grown far stronger. Later, Weiss eats his meal while Zevis checks on his magic training. Weiss considers his progress steady, though Milk's brutal training still pushes him to the limit. He works equally on all 4 elements of magic: fire, water, wind, and earth, as required. The difficulty of mastering them all makes him feel that Milk's methods are harsher than even the criminals he once fought. At that moment, Milk approaches, causing Weiss to stiffen in fear. Zevis calmly explains that Milk pushes him so hard because his talent is abnormal. Normally, a mage can only handle a single element. Milk scolds Weiss as usual, while Zevis continues his explanation. Even Milk, an S-rank adventurer, can only use 2 elements, yet Weiss shows signs of controlling all 4. This marks him as possessing an extremely rare gift. Zevis believes that if Weiss had remained lazy, this talent would never have surfaced. In the past, Zevis was astonished by Weiss's careless attitude, but now he is deeply impressed by his persistence and growth. Weiss has become someone truly admirable. Soon after, Weiss nervously apologizes, fearing punishment, while Lilith steps in to shield him. Milk senses something unusual and realizes that Weiss has been practicing magic without her knowledge. She demands proof, and Weiss reveals his hidden progress by manifesting light and dark magic at the same time. Milk immediately understands the significance. Beyond the 4 basic elements, Weiss can also wield special elements. Weiss explains that he kept this secret because his magic is still incomplete. His true goal is to merge light and dark magic into a single form, something unique to him. Now confident enough to attempt it, he combines both forces and reveals the result of a year and a half of relentless effort. The outcome leaves both Milk and Lilith genuinely stunned. That night, during a formal gathering, Weiss is seen stifling a yawn. Lilith, standing beside him, notices his fatigue. Weiss recognizes that staying up late was his own mistake and that such carelessness has no place in an important setting. After that, Weiss successfully completes his original magic. His light element spell becomes a powerful healing magic known as Healing Light, while his dark element spell manifests as a curse-based poison magic called Dark Haze. By combining these two, he creates Dark Heal, a unique technique that automatically heals all allies within a certain range while continuously inflicting curse damage on any target recognized as an enemy. Although the technique is finally completed, its mana consumption is overwhelming. Weiss completely exhausts himself afterward and realizes that his mana capacity is still far from sufficient. More training is clearly necessary. Lilith prepares to wake Weiss and decides to fetch strong alcohol for that purpose. She rushes off without listening to him, moving with sharp and agile motions similar to those of an assassin. Weiss notices this and recalls rumors from the game's backstory about hidden guards within the Vincent family. Before he can think further, a noble lady suddenly addresses him. Weiss freezes when he recognizes her as Countess Cynthia Violetta. Her striking beauty immediately confirms her identity as the game's main heroine. Her sharp gaze and hostile attitude do not surprise Weiss. In the original story, Weiss is despised by nearly every character, and Cynthia is the one who hates him the most. She is also the person responsible for leaving his body riddled with fatal wounds in the original timeline. As a member of the Vincent family, Weiss has reluctantly attended this gathering, but he now regrets it. He never expected to encounter Cynthia before even enrolling in the academy. Trying to calm himself, he reminds himself that he has not yet done anything to provoke her in this timeline. That thought quickly collapses when he remembers the crimes of the former Weiss. In the past, Weiss abused his noble status to forcibly invite Cynthia to his room and attempted to take advantage of her. The memory fills Weiss with horror and shame. He realizes that Cynthia's hatred is deep and fully justified. Overwhelmed by guilt, Weiss bows deeply and offers a sincere apology, acknowledging that his past actions were disgraceful and unworthy of a noble. He openly admits his regret, knowing full well that forgiveness may never come. Even so, Weiss believes that Cynthia is not cruel enough to persecute someone who genuinely reflects on their sins. He notices that her anger appears to ease slightly, surprised by his unexpected humility. Weiss feels a small sense of relief, hoping that this encounter may reduce the risk of his eventual downfall. Understanding that staying any longer could be dangerous, Weiss decides that he should withdraw at the right moment. Although he admired Cynthia in the original story, he knows that they are like light and darkness, destined never to walk the same path. He convinces himself that keeping his distance is the safest choice. Just as he prepares to leave, Weiss is stunned when Cynthia suddenly takes his hand. Music begins to play, and the unexpected action freezes both Weiss and Lilith, who witnesses the scene from nearby. Cynthia steps closer, her presence overwhelming, and silently signals that it is now Weiss's turn to respond. Cynthia and Weiss sit together, highlighting the pleasant weather outside. She sips her tea calmly, while Weiss quietly wonders why she is in his home. This moment traces back to the night she invited him to dance. She had noticed the changes in him, likely hearing rumors about his daily training in preparation for the academy. Weiss realizes that the nobles must have been talking about his progress, and Cynthia's awareness confirms it. During the dance, she gently teases Weiss about the events of the past, reminding him of what he once said. He blushes at the memory, feeling both embarrassed and flustered. By the time the dance ends, Cynthia departs gracefully, leaving Weiss with the undeniable impression that she has captured his heart. The next day brings an even greater surprise. Weiss receives a letter from his father about a dinner party at his estate with Cynthia, only to discover that she is already waiting outside. He quickly instructs his servants to prepare for her arrival. Lilith notices another letter tucked away, adding to the excitement and tension. Back in the present, Weiss reflects on his conflicted feelings. He is genuinely happy to have tea with Cynthia, the person he admires, yet he knows he must maintain distance. In the original story, Cynthia was destined to end up with the protagonist, Alan. If Weiss grows too close to her, the events with Alan would change, and he would lose the ability to act according to the original scenario. Even small changes, such as winning against Alan in a test, could already alter the future. Taking the main heroine away from him entirely would completely disrupt the story. Weiss resolves that he must maintain a careful balance, keeping Cynthia at a controlled distance. Cynthia recalls Weiss confessing that he fell in love at first sight. She notes that his previous arrogance left her dissatisfied, but now sees a sincere change in him. Weiss is stunned by how quickly her feelings seem to shift, revealing a surprisingly soft side beneath her noble appearance. He recalls that in the original story, Cynthia becomes devoted to the one she loves almost immediately. Realizing the danger, Weiss understands that he must carefully manage her growing affection, ensuring it does not become too strong too quickly. Cynthia leans closer and softly comments on Weiss's quiet side, remarking that it is shy and cute. Weiss feels a surge of panic as he realizes her favorability toward him is rising seemingly on its own, faster than he can control. At that precise moment, Lilith arrives unexpectedly, startling Weiss so much that he lets out a pitiful scream. Embarrassment floods him immediately, but he reasons that perhaps this interruption could cool Cynthia's growing affection. To his dismay, he notices that her love-struck expression only intensifies, making Weiss feel the urgent need to do something before her feelings deepen further. Before he can consider his next move, Cynthia brings up the topic of the day's matter with his father, the subject of their engagement. She explains that the dinner party has been arranged as a formal introduction between them. Though it is a decision originally made by their parents, she reveals that after meeting Weiss and speaking with him, she has chosen to agree as well. The unexpected nature of this revelation leaves Weiss stunned, forcing him to reconsider the intentions behind the arrangement. Meanwhile, Weiss's father is seen at a playground with his two loyal bodyguards, reflecting on the situation. He observes Weiss's handsome appearance and his slight shyness in matters of romance, recalling how Weiss finally got the chance to dance with Cynthia. His father acts immediately, arranging the engagement without hesitation, confident that he understands Weiss's desires merely by observing his expression. He instructs the bodyguards to assist in preparing the necessary arrangements, ensuring that everything is ready for Weiss's happiness. As Cynthia takes her leave, Weiss contemplates the meaning behind the term engagement. While it is common for noble families to arrange marriages for political or strategic purposes, he realizes that this is not a traditional parent-arranged political marriage. His father's intention was simply to make Weiss happy, a gesture born out of care rather than duty. Weiss reflects on the fact that his father hardly appeared in the original story, rarely coming home and leaving Weiss to grow up without guidance. Yet now, he sees clearly that his father is the epitome of indulgence, someone who grants everything his child desires, and Weiss understands how his father's absence and indulgence might have contributed to the creation of the villainous figure in the past. Weiss notices Lilith crying nearby. She quietly declares that he should be happy with Cynthia before running off at incredible speed. Weiss is stunned, unsure what has caused such an intense reaction, until Milk's voice reaches him, explaining the situation. Today's training assignment is to chase after Lilith. Milk angrily points out that Lilith has been supporting Weiss for a year and a half, and though the engagement is not his choice, she cannot allow Weiss to ignore her feelings of sadness. Milk instructs him to return to the mansion with Lilith, warning that failure will result in her giving him death as punishment. Realizing the importance of Lilith's support, Weiss immediately pursues her. He understands that if it were not for her unwavering presence over the past year and a half, he would have remained lazy and unmotivated, never reaching his current potential. He calls out to her as he draws closer, but Lilith accelerates, insisting that he leave her alone. Weiss is shocked to find that no matter how hard he pushes himself, he cannot catch up. His frustration grows as he continues to chase her through the forest, desperate for her to stop and listen. As he runs, Weiss explains to Lilith that she is someone precious to him and that the engagement is entirely his father's decision. He further reveals that he intends to bring her with him to the Noble Academy as his personal servant, a privilege normally reserved only for high-ranking nobles. By choosing her, he demonstrates the immense trust he places in her. Lilith is surprised by Weiss's words, yet she continues running while asking, her tone incredulous, whether his pursuit truly means he will chase her forever. They both slide along the handrails of a bridge at breakneck speeds, wind rushing past them and hearts pounding, and Weiss feels his consciousness beginning to falter under the extreme strain, fully aware that he is nearing his limit. His vision blurs, his body struggles to maintain balance, and the momentum of the chase grows increasingly dangerous. Suddenly, Lilith halts at an intersection, her feet finding solid ground, but Weiss cannot stop in time due to the velocity he has built up. He teeters on the edge of a cliff, the ground giving way beneath him, and he braces for an inevitable fall. Observing the imminent danger, Lilith reacts instinctively, leaping after him with astonishing agility. She catches Weiss midair, her arms wrapping around him in a firm and reassuring embrace. She tells him to remain calm, promising that she will do her best and that the secret of their newfound bond will never reach the eyes or ears of anyone else. Weiss weakly opens his eyes, still shocked by the sudden closeness, as the two of them plunge together into the river below, sending up a massive splash that echoes through the forest. The water envelopes them, cold and forceful, yet Weiss feels a strange sense of clarity and relief in Lilith's protective hold. In that moment, the unexpected turns of fate culminate. Weiss becomes formally engaged to Cynthia while simultaneously becoming intimately involved with Lilith, a bond forged in trust, shared danger, and unwavering loyalty. Meanwhile, in a distant location, Alan stands with a wooden sword clutched in his hands, his face lined with fatigue and determination. He reflects on the impending entrance exam, knowing that the trial is almost upon him. Milk stands sternly before Cynthia, questioning whether she believes her current magic proficiency is sufficient, and Cynthia calmly acknowledges that while she has made progress, she knows she can still refine her abilities further. At the same time, Milk directs Lilith to lower her magic output slightly, teaching her to balance her energy evenly and maintain control, while Weiss trains alongside them, pushing himself to keep pace with both of their growing skills. The events of the previous days weigh heavily on Weiss's mind. In the span of only a short time, he has become formally engaged to Cynthia while simultaneously entangled in a secret, intimate bond with Lilith. The situation is so absurdly complicated that he struggles to comprehend it all, silently cursing his father for engineering such an intricate web of relationships that now consumes his life in ways he could never have anticipated. After observing their progress, Milk decides to conclude the basic training, announcing that they will now move on to practical sparring exercises. She asks Cynthia and Lilith if they have ever sparred before, and both admit that they have some prior experience, which surprises Weiss. He had not realized that Lilith had trained in combat before. He considers that both women are now preparing for the upcoming entrance exam in a few months. Cynthia, with her natural talent and already extraordinary capabilities, could easily pass without additional effort, yet she chooses to continue training rigorously. Lilith, on the other hand, was originally intended to serve as Weiss's attendant, meaning she would not even need to take the test. However, her desire to support him academically convinces Weiss to allow her participation, so she trains alongside him. Technically, neither of the two requires this training, yet Cynthia's relentless dedication threatens to surpass her original limits, potentially making her an even more formidable figure than she was in the original story. With the preliminary observations complete, Milk announces that Weiss and Cynthia will spar against each other. She emphasizes that despite Cynthia being his fiancée, Weiss must not hold back, and he must treat the encounter as a true test of combat skill. Without warning, Cynthia launches a sudden, precise attack, catching Weiss off guard. He barely manages to block her strike, his muscles straining under the force and speed of her assault. Milk's voice cuts through the tension, reminding Weiss of the lesson she has emphasized repeatedly: the most important principle in any fight is to seize the initiative, to strike first. Weiss suddenly notices that Cynthia has seemingly vanished from his field of vision, her presence now undetectable, and instinctively activates his eye ability. In that moment, he narrowly dodges a sudden sneak attack from behind, immediately realizing the nature of Cynthia's specialty, ice magic. Her signature technique allows her to infuse her legs with magical energy, enabling her to glide and maneuver at incredible speeds, almost like skating across the floor, striking from blind spots with precision. Weiss barely reacts in time, his senses heightened, and counters with his wooden sword, delivering a light tap to the top of her head. Cynthia cries out sharply in pain, clutching the spot Weiss struck. Panicking, Weiss quickly explains that he only intended it to be a light tap, yet Cynthia, still holding her head, expresses her frustration. She remarks that she has sparred countless times at home, yet this is the first occasion on which her attacks have been dodged so effortlessly, leaving her incredulous. Meanwhile, Lilith steps forward, her healing magic swiftly mending the bump on Cynthia's head, earning grateful acknowledgement from Cynthia herself. Observing the scene, Milk turns to Weiss with a curious expression, asking how he was able to read Cynthia's high-speed movements, as her agility should have made such anticipation nearly impossible. Milk then dismisses the momentary analysis, suggesting that they test whether Weiss's success was merely a fluke, and announces that he will now face Lilith in sparring. Weiss protests, asking why he must fight again, but Milk simply notes that he does not appear fatigued enough to stop, implying that perseverance is as much a part of training as technique. As Weiss faces Lilith, his thoughts initially betray a hint of underestimation. She is, after all, merely a maid, or so he thinks. Yet, he quickly realizes that her actions, which he has observed time and again, are far from maid-like. Every movement she makes radiates precision, speed, and intent, and he understands that even a single lapse in attention could be fatal. Without warning, Lilith multiplies before his eyes, creating numerous afterimages that dart erratically around him, launching a barrage of attacks so fast and unpredictable that Weiss barely manages to block them all. Milk, watching from the sidelines, recognizes that Weiss's ability to read Lilith's movements likely stems from the same eye technique he used against Cynthia, confirming that his earlier encounter was not just a fluke but a true application of his observational skill. Weiss steadies himself, reassessing the situation. He had never imagined that Lilith, whose role in the original game barely warranted attention, could be this formidable. Although she has only recently begun learning magic, her speed surpasses his, and her foundational knowledge of swordsmanship makes her a lethal opponent. Weiss realizes that if he fails to approach this sparring session with full seriousness, he could very well be defeated. In response, he sets aside his wooden sword, placing both palms firmly on the ground, and begins to channel his combo magic, Dark Heal. Lilith immediately recognizes the skill. It is Weiss's original magic, designed to heal allies within a magical circle while simultaneously inflicting continuous curse damage upon enemies. Initially, Lilith considers fleeing the circle, calculating that she must avoid prolonged exposure to Weiss's powerful magic. Yet she quickly observes that Weiss has temporarily released his wooden sword, dedicating both hands entirely to casting the spell. The realization strikes her that he is entirely defenseless while channeling Dark Heal, and that escaping the circle may still leave her vulnerable. Her combat abilities are primarily close range, and if she attempts to evade, Weiss could simply counterattack, striking from within the magic circle while she remains exposed. Recognizing that this is the only moment to act decisively, Lilith dashes forward, closing the distance between them with explosive speed. Weiss, however, smirks knowingly as her attack collides with an invisible barrier surrounding him, bouncing off harmlessly. In the same motion, he seizes his wooden sword once more. It turns out that the absolute barrier combined with Weiss's dark eye has granted him a remarkable defensive advantage. Even when his body cannot physically keep up with Lilith's lightning-fast movements, the synergy of these two skills allows him to defend against nearly all her attacks, at least as long as his mana reserves remain sufficient. The combination of foresight and protection creates a buffer between him and his opponent, making his defenses nearly unbreakable under sustained assault. Observing the sparring from the sidelines, Milk suddenly turns to Lilith, preparing to assess her next move, only to notice something amiss. Her eyes widen in alarm as Lilith begins to sway unsteadily, losing coordination mid-step. Realizing the danger, Milk immediately shouts at Weiss to cancel his magic at once, knowing that Lilith has been overwhelmed. Despite Weiss's initial shock, he obeys, halting the spell just in time to prevent further harm. Lilith collapses, falling unconscious, and later is seen resting against the sturdy trunk of a tree. She quietly admits that it was a complete defeat, her pride slightly bruised, while Weiss kneels beside her, frantically apologizing and asking if she is truly all right. Milk steps in calmly, explaining that Lilith has been given an advanced restorative potion and will recover fully, yet she cannot conceal her curiosity and concern. She questions Weiss about the magic he used, noting that she was aware it could sap vigor over time, but she never imagined that Lilith, of all people, would be incapacitated within mere seconds. She probes whether there were any additional hidden effects to the spell. Weiss explains with a measured tone, detailing that Dark Heal is not just a healing or damaging spell. When an enemy enters the magic circle, it simultaneously applies multiple debilitating effects. It reduces physical strength, drains vigor and vitality, depletes mana, lowers magic defense, and slows both movement and attack speed. Since Lilith's mana reserves are still relatively small, the rapid exhaustion from these cumulative effects caused her sudden collapse. Weiss also notes the unique self-enhancing property of the spell, All stats drained from enemies can be added to himself, strengthening him in proportion to the number and strength of foes within the circle. If he recognizes someone as an ally, he can transfer the same enhancements to them, creating a dynamic balance of power. As he explains this, Weiss notices everyone around him staring in disbelief, their expressions a mix of awe and fear. Milk, however, seems particularly fired up, her usual composure replaced by the intensity of a challenger eager to settle a score. She announces that she will duel Weiss herself, claiming that it has been far too long since she felt this kind of exhilaration and that he must take responsibility for what just happened. The sparring concludes with Weiss planted headfirst into the ground, Milk's overwhelming power and rage leaving him flattened yet alive, a testament to the intensity of her training methods. The days pass relentlessly after that incident, with Weiss enduring Milk's Spartan regime day after day. The tension and subtle misunderstandings between Cynthia and Lilith linger unresolved, yet life presses forward relentlessly. Months fly by, each day filled with strenuous training, strategic preparations, and moments of personal growth. Eventually, Weiss, Lilith, and Cynthia arrive at the imposing gates of Noblesse Oblige, marking the long-awaited day of the Magic Academy entrance test.